Since it's already the end of the year, I'm slacking off at my job. That's when I come across a forum post on the internet. My husband has gone on a business trip on his own. This is the photo he sent me when he updated me on his situation. Everyone, can you please take a look at the photo and tell me if there are any problems with it? The internet users are quick to go into their Sherlock Holmes mode. Still, they aren't able to spot any problems with the photo. But a comment is quick to catch my attention. Am I the only one who thinks that this post is a clickbait? Could it be that a disloyal jerk who's cheating on his wife wants to proclaim his devotion toward her but is scared that he might get caught? Maybe that's why this photo is uploaded here instead, so that everyone can help him find out what's wrong with this photo. As soon as the comment is posted, the original poster deletes the post instantly. This makes me frown. At the same time, my husband, Gavin Prescott, sends me a photo on WhatsApp. Honey, here's my daily update. Your darling husband is still devoted to you as always. As I stare at the photo, which is exactly the same one that was posted on the internet, I feel my heart sinking. This is definitely not a coincidence. My expression went cold, and I typed out a reply on purpose. I swear, someone is hiding by the window in that photo. It took a long time for my husband Gavin Prescott's response to come through. You're seeing things. That's just a potted plant. He was lying to me. My chest tightened, and I called him, but he didn't pick up. My mind started racing on its own, turning the whole thing over and over. Something about this was deeply wrong. When he came home from his business trip, he was the same as always, wrapping his arms around me, all playful and affectionate. It was like the photo wasn't even on his radar. I brought it up myself. Honey, you've been sneaky. Just look at this photo. He cut me off before I could finish my thought. What about the photo? He didn't even glance at it. Anger flared across his face. I check in with you every single time I travel. Why are you still so paranoid? What could possibly be in that photo? Can you just stop overthinking for once? Then he completely ignored me and stormed into the bathroom. The suspicion in my gut only deepened. That forum thread I'd found had commenters coaching men on this exact strategy. If a wife latched onto something, the advice was to flip the script, turning it around on her and making her feel like she was the one with the problem. But was I really the one with the problem? That night, he tucked his phone under his pillow before falling asleep. I lay there with my eyes open, staring out the window, listening to his breathing settle into a slow, steady rhythm beside me. After a while, I turned my head and carefully slid the phone out from under his pillow. The passcode was still our anniversary. I went through his call log and messages and found nothing. I let out a breath, and guilt crept in around the edges. Maybe I really had been overthinking everything. But then I remembered what people online had said about cheating husbands hiding apps and using duplicate messaging accounts. My heart climbed into my throat, and I followed the steps exactly as they described, one by one. That was when I found it. The hidden account was full of cluttered messages. I tapped through a few conversations without seeing anything alarming at first, but then I thought to check the cached images buried in the app's file folder. That was where I found the hotel check-in photo he'd sent me, and by tracing the image, I tracked down which conversation it had been shared in. It belonged to a woman nicknamed Lise. I opened the message thread between Gavin and this woman. Honey, routine check-in for you. Your man's been very well behaved. You're being so good. Obviously. I'm loyal to a fault. I'd never do anything to hurt you, honey. The pain hit so hard that it felt like a fist closing around my heart. Gavin was really cheating on me. I forced myself past the ache and opened Lisa's profile page. Then I froze. I was staring at wedding photos of the two of them. Underneath, there were comments from his parents, the same people who had never once warmed up to me. Our daughter-in-law is just gorgeous. A perfect match for our son. The color drained from my face. A perfect match? Then what was I? Which one of us was actually the other woman? I didn't sleep that night. I lay there watching Gavin's face as he slept, saying nothing, swallowing every question back down. The moment Gavin left, I got in the car and drove to his hometown. I stood at the entrance to the courtyard, my nerves wound tight as I peered inside. A young girl, about 5 or 6 years old, was bouncing around the yard playing by herself. She spotted me and shouted toward the house. Mom, someone's here. My heart seized. Elise Carver slowly walked out, with one hand cradling her swollen belly. She looked even softer in person than she had in the wedding photos, wearing pajamas and slippers with an easy smile on her face. From the size of her belly, she couldn't have been far from her due date. She had a spatula in her hand as if she'd been in the middle of cooking. Everything about her radiated the image of a devoted wife and mother. I stared at her, my brows creasing. The ring on her finger was identical to the one on mine. Can I help you? She smiled at me pleasantly, as though she had no idea who I was. My throat felt raw. Who are you to Gavin Prescott? Elise was about to answer when the girl beat her to it, bouncing with excitement. He's my daddy. Elise nodded along, confirming it like it was the most natural thing in the world. So it was true. The reality of the situation hit me like a wall. When did you two get married? Irritation flickered across Elise's face. What does that have to do with you? It has everything to do with. But before I could finish speaking, two older figures rushed out from inside, their expressions guarded and hostile. They were Gavin's parents. They positioned themselves in front of Elise like a shield and looked at me like I was a threat. You're not welcome here. Leave. I was so furious that I almost laughed. Why should I? You owe me an explanation. There's nothing to explain. Gavin's father, Paul Prescott, grabbed a broom and leveled it at me, his eyes full of warning. Elise is carrying our grandchild. She doesn't need this kind of stress from you. Get out. Now. They were treating me like I was the intruder in their perfect little family, an enemy at the gates. Elise looked genuinely confused. What's going on here? Are you looking for my husband? He's away for work and won't be back until the weekend. If you're a friend of his, you're welcome to stay for dinner. It's really no trouble, just one more plate at the table. She looked like a woman completely wrapped up in her own happiness. My heart twisted so hard that I couldn't breathe. She was nearly full term. If I destroyed everything right now, the consequences would be more than I could bear. I turned around and left, feeling completely numb. When I got home, Gavin was already waiting in the living room. His parents must have messaged him. Why did you go to my hometown? She's about to give birth. She can't handle that kind of shock. If you have a problem, you take it up with me. She's innocent in all of this. Fighting back my tears, I sat on the couch and stared at him coldly. He dropped to his knees and started slapping himself across the face, hard, again and again. Sienna, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. Please, just give me another chance. She's really your wife? You actually have children together? He clenched his jaw and nodded. The blood drained from my face, and my voice shook. Between the two of us, who is your wife? His expression turned grim, and he told me the truth piece by piece. He and Elise had grown up together as childhood sweethearts, but he'd fallen for me at first sight in college. During our second year together, he went home for the holidays, got drunk, and ended up sleeping with her. You were so focused on your career back then. You hadn't made time for me in forever, and I slipped. And you never wanted kids. My parents resented you for it. I was stuck in the middle with no idea what to do. Then that one night got her pregnant, and my parents were thrilled. They threatened to disown me if I didn't let her keep the baby. I figured that since you didn't want to get pregnant anyway, I wouldn't push you. So I just let it happen. I was so furious that I laughed. I questioned, so you built a second family with her back home? Gavin nodded. Sienna, you have to believe me. You're the only one I love. If I had feelings for her, I would have been with her from the start. Why would I have chosen you? He was desperate to prove his loyalty, but all I felt was revulsion. I stared at him coldly. Was this really the same man I'd fallen in love with? After we got married, he'd treated me so well. He knew I didn't like spending time with his parents, so he never once pressured me to visit his hometown. He was always trying to smooth things over between the two of them and me. If either of them said a single bad word about me, he'd shut it down immediately. He'd even spent 3 straight years celebrating the holidays with my parents instead of his, and he didn't care when his own mother and father called him in a fury over it. I would never forget how he'd stood in front of my parents and sworn, with absolute conviction, that he would never let me down and never let me be hurt. And the entire time he was making those promises, he'd had another family waiting for him back home. He'd lied to me for 5 full years. Every trip back was to see his other wife and daughter. He'd even gotten his childhood sweetheart pregnant a second time. The happiness I thought I had was nothing but a joke, something I'd invented in my own head. Sienna. Gavin reached for my hand. I'm begging you. Don't leave me. I shook him off in disgust, swallowing down the nausea rising in my throat. You don't want a divorce? Hope flickered across his face. Then what about your sweetheart and your daughter? She doesn't care about any of that. All she wants is stability. She has my parents and the kids. She doesn't care who I come home to, as long as you don't make a scene back there and embarrass her. She'll take care of my parents, and it'll be one less thing you have to worry about. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I grabbed the trash can next to me and threw up. So what, she's your mistress tucked away in the countryside? You're both disgusting. I slapped him across the face, got to my feet, and shoved him out the door. He knelt outside, begging and pleading, and it went on for what felt like forever until his tone suddenly shifted to panic. Sienna, my daughter's being bullied by the kids at her preschool. I have to go check on her. And then he was gone. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face was as white as a sheet, and my eyes were bloodshot. My head was pounding so badly that I collapsed onto the bed and passed out. I slept until the middle of the night, and Gavin still wasn't home. But my mind was sharper than it had been in days. I couldn't keep living like this. I needed to divorce him. I dug up the phone number I'd saved from Gavin's phone, the one belonging to Elise, and sent her a message. I'd like to talk to you about Gavin's bigamy. Her reply came almost immediately. Okay. We met at a KFC near his hometown. I looked up at Elise, and my heart ached for her despite everything. I told her the whole truth, every last detail, and held nothing back. I've already talked to a lawyer. What he's done is bigamy. We can press charges. Elisa's expression stayed perfectly calm. And then what? Sienna, you don't actually think I had no idea he married you, do you? I froze, and a chill crawled down my spine. Elise let out a mocking little laugh. I've known since college that he fell for you and married you. Then why did you still? Because I don't care. Everyone back home knows that we grew up together. As far as they're concerned, we're the real couple, and you're the shameless homewrecker who broke up a family. And here's something you probably don't know. Your marriage certificate is fake. I'm the one on his real marriage license. I'm his legal wife, and I'm not about to help you prove that he committed bigamy. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Regardless of all that, he still cheated on you. She shrugged like it meant nothing. He doesn't even have real feelings for you. Why would I care? He was only doing it so that our daughter and I could have a better life. I asked, what's that supposed to mean? Elise replied, exactly what it sounds like. He never loved you. Gavin and I have been together since we were teenagers. When he chased you in college, when he sweet-talked you, all of that was for your family's money and connections. And while I was pregnant, you were handling his needs for me, like some free whore. So really, why would I care? Elise looked down at me like I was beneath her. You're the mistress I signed off on. As long as my position as the real wife is secure, I couldn't care less about you. I was stunned by the sheer audacity of her words. She looked thrilled with herself. I'm carrying the Prescott family's firstborn son. His parents only recognize me as their real daughter-in-law. If I wanted to, I could have you thrown out tomorrow. Sienna Sanchez, to us, you're nothing. If your family didn't have money or if you couldn't fund Gavin's business, he wouldn't have given you a second look. We grew up together. I gave myself to him the day I turned 18. He's told me more than once that every time he touched you, it made his skin crawl. He had to take pills just to get it up. And your family almost going bankrupt? That wasn't bad luck. He deliberately funneled your family's key projects to a competitor, all because you were clinging to him, and I got a little jealous. Plus, that $1 million he borrowed from you, the one he said was for a business emergency? He spent it on my engagement ring and our wedding. Because I was the one worth investing in, and you were just the fool giving it away for free. Elisa's smirk widened. So why would I waste my time worrying about someone as worthless and embarrassing as you? I was shaking with rage. I raised my hand to slap her, but she moved faster. She slapped herself hard across the face, once, twice, until her cheeks were red and swollen. Then she dropped to her knees, wrapped her arms around my legs, and burst into tears. Miss Sanchez, you have all the money and power in the world. It would be so easy for you to destroy me. But I'm begging you, for the sake of my baby, please stop going after my husband. My husband only has eyes for me. Even if you try to throw money at us to tear us apart, we will never give in. I stood there, completely blindsided. And where no one could see, Elise dug her nails into my thigh so hard that I yelped. The pain was so sudden and sharp that I kicked out on instinct. She crumpled to the floor, clutching her stomach, her face going pale. Miss Sanchez, just because you want my husband doesn't mean you can try to kill my baby. Are you trying to drive me and my child to our deaths? Every pair of eyes in the restaurant turned on me, filled with hatred. I was shaking from head to toe. A few people rushed forward, pulling Elise behind them protectively and shoving me back hard. I stumbled and hit the ground. Before I could even get up, someone spat on me and kicked me. Disgusting homewrecker. You make me sick. My head struck the leg of a chair, and everything went black. When I came to, I was in a hospital. It was dark outside, and there was a message from Gavin on my phone. Daily check-in photo. I'll be home tomorrow. The photo looked completely ordinary, like he'd never been living a double life at all. A wave of grief washed over me. Right then, a message came through from an unknown number. Do you know what Gavin is doing right now? I tapped in and saw that the person had sent me a photo of a birthday cake. It was Elisa's birthday, and the whole family was celebrating together. Gavin's parents were in the picture, along with every one of his close friends. It made one thing perfectly clear. Elise was the one they all considered Mrs. Prescott. And me? I had truly become what they called the mistress, the shameful secret no one wanted to acknowledge. Rage and pain hit me at the same time. I pulled my knees to my chest and sobbed. Since my marriage to Gavin was fake, there was no need for us to file for a divorce. A clean break would do. I packed up everything Gavin owned and threw it all out, then sent him a breakup message and blocked his number. He never came back, and I thought it was over. I didn't expect Elise to show up instead. She arrived with a camera crew trailing behind her, her belly swollen and her daughter in tow. Her face was deathly pale with dark circles carved deep under her eyes. The moment she saw me, she pulled her daughter forward, and the two of them dropped to their knees right in front of me. She braced one hand against her stomach and started wailing. Sienna, you're the Sanchez heiress. You could have any man you want. Why do you have to take mine? I'm pregnant. My husband is trying to support all three of us, and it's already so hard. You're using your family's company to pressure him into being with you. Are you trying to kill us? She stayed on her knees, rocking and sobbing so hard that her whole body shook. The young girl knelt beside her, also in tears. My employees stared at me in disbelief, and I watched the way they looked at me shift in real time. Elise slapped herself across the face with a sharp crack. Please, just let my husband go. He doesn't want to be with you. I'm begging you. She threw her arms around my legs and sobbed hysterically. I clenched my jaw and forced the words out through my teeth. Elise, stop with the act and get out of my building. People in the crowd had already started live streaming the scene. I could hear bystanders muttering around me. The Sanchez heiress is somebody's side piece? Unbelievable. And she's making the pregnant wife kneel? That's just evil. I pried Elise off me and called Gavin. Get here right now and take Elise away, or I swear you'll regret it. Gavin rushed over. Elise was still on the ground, clutching her daughter and sobbing uncontrollably. He knelt beside her and gently helped her to her feet, his face full of tenderness. Honey, don't beg her for anything. I'm never going to leave you. But she's the Sanchez heiress. I don't want her making things difficult for you. I don't want you to suffer because of me. I was shaking with fury as I watched the two of them go back and forth. Gavin, tell everyone what's really going on. Right now. Gavin stammered and couldn't get a coherent word out. Meanwhile, Elise tugged at his sleeve, her face twisted in pain. Honey, Ms. Sanchez has been forcing you to be with her, threatening to destroy your company and leave our family with nothing. I can't stand by and watch you lose everything you've built. Maybe you should just divorce me and be with her. Their daughter burst into tears. Mom, Dad, please don't get divorced. I don't want to grow up without a dad. Something hardened in Gavin's expression. He looked at me, walked over, and slapped me across the face. I pressed my hand to my cheek and stared at him in utter disbelief. He glared at me through gritted teeth. I've told you 100 times. I don't care if you're the Sanchez heiress. I'm not interested in you. I'd rather die than be with you. Elise chimed in with a pitying sigh. I have to wonder what kind of upbringing the Sanchez family gave their daughter, if her only ambition is to be someone's mistress. What a disgrace. I had never been this humiliated in my entire life. My face burned under the weight of every contemptuous stare in the room. The comments from onlookers kept coming, one after another. Shameless. The Sanchez family is a lost cause. Just like that, I had become the other woman in everyone's eyes. I looked up at Gavin, my expression going cold. Gavin, if you insist on pinning this on me, then you'd better be ready for what comes next. The ringing in my ears was louder than the murmurs of the crowd. The slap had left a hot, radiating burn across my left cheek, but the coldness spreading through my chest was far worse. Gavin stood there, his chest heaving, his arms still partially raised as if he couldn't believe he had actually done it. Beside him, Elise held their daughter. Tight, a picture of fragile, victimized motherhood. The camera crew she had brought continued to film, their lenses capturing every second of my humiliation. Get out, I said. My voice didn't shake. It was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that made the surrounding chatter die down. Sienna, Gavin started, a sudden flicker of panic crossing his eyes. He looked at the crowd, then at the cameras, realizing the gravity of what he had just done on a live broadcast. I said, get out of my building, I repeated, looking him dead in the eye. All of you. Security, finally shaking off their shock, rushed forward. They moved with a sudden, aggressive urgency, pushing the camera crew back and escorting Gavin, Elise, and their crying child toward the exit. The onlookers parted, whispering furiously, their eyes darting between me and the retreating trio. I didn't wait for them to leave the lobby. I turned on my heel and walked straight to the private executive elevator. The doors slid shut, cutting off the noise, the staring eyes, and the suffocating air of the lobby. Once inside my office, I locked the door, walked over to the private bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. My cheek was crimson, the faint outline of Gavin's fingers already beginning to swell. I grabbed a clean towel, wrapped it around an ice pack from the mini fridge, and pressed it to my face. The physical pain was nothing compared to the cold, calculating fury settling into my bones. I picked up my desk phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in months. Dad, I said when the call connected. I need you to send Julian Vance to my office. Right now. There was a pause on the other end. My father, Arthur Sanchez, was a man of few words, but he knew the tone of my voice. Are you all right, Sienna? No, I replied, staring at my reflection. But I will be. 20 minutes later, Julian Vance, the Sanchez family's chief legal counsel, walked into my office. Julian was a sharp, meticulous man in his late 40s, known for his ruthless efficiency in corporate litigation. He took one look at my face, and his expression hardened. Who did this? He asked, sitting down across from me. Gavin, I said, setting the ice pack aside. But the physical assault is the least of our worries. I need you to look into something. I laid out everything, the fake marriage certificate Elise had boasted about, the hidden phone, the $1 million Gavin had coerced from me under the guise of a business emergency, and his deliberate sabotage of our family's key projects to our competitor, Vanguard Group. Julian listened without interrupting, his pen flying across his legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back, tapping his chin. If what Elise Carver said is true, and your marriage certificate is indeed a forgery, Gavin Prescott has committed a massive, multi-layered federal crime. Julian explained, his voice calm but lethal. If you were never legally married, he has absolutely no marital claim to any of your assets. More importantly, every single dollar he took from you, every piece of proprietary data he accessed from the Sanchez Group, is not considered shared marital property. It is outright grand larceny, fraud, and corporate espionage. A slow, cold realization washed over me. By pretending to be my husband, Gavin thought he was shielding himself under the umbrella of marital disputes. But by revealing that our marriage was a sham to protect Elise's legal status, they had stripped away Gavin's only legal shield. He played himself, I murmured. Precisely, Julian smiled, though there was no warmth in it. He thought he was being clever by keeping Elise as his legal wife to secure his personal life, while using you for your wealth. But legally, he has walked straight into a trap of his own making. We don't just sue him, Sienna. We destroy him. Where do we start? I asked. First, we secure the evidence of the fake marriage. Then, we track the $1 million. And finally, we find the mole inside the Sanchez Group who helped him funnel those projects to Vanguard. Julian stood up, buttoning his jacket. Keep your head down for the next 48 hours, Sienna. Let them celebrate their little victory. The higher they climb, the harder they will fall. While I remained quiet, the internet was having a field day. Elise's live stream had gone viral. Snippets of her kneeling in my lobby, begging the corrupt heiress to return her husband, were plastered across every social media platform. The comment sections were toxic, filled with vitriol directed at me and the Sanchez Group. Rich people think they can buy anything, even other people's husbands. I hope her company goes under. Disgusting homewrecker. Look at her face when he slapped her. She deserved it. I watched the metrics rise from the comfort of my apartment. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, but I had already whitelisted my contacts, allowing only my father, Julian, and my core team to reach me. Gavin, meanwhile, was riding high. Through my private investigators, I monitored his movements. He had booked a celebratory dinner at an upscale restaurant in his hometown, inviting his parents and a few close business associates. He was telling everyone that he had finally cut ties with the predatory heiress who had been blackmailing him into a relationship. On the third day, my investigator sent me a link to a new social media post from Elise. It was a photo of a brand new, luxury SUV parked outside her house, wrapped in a giant red bow. The caption read, "A little pushback is nothing when love wins. Thank you, my amazing husband, for always putting us first. Our new family car is perfect. Hashtag blessed, hashtag family first, hashtag justice." I stared at the photo of the shiny car. The purchase price of that vehicle was roughly $80,000. Paid for with my money, I whispered to myself. My phone rang. It was Julian. "Sienna, we have the bank records," Julian said, his voice laced with professional satisfaction. "The $1 million you transferred to Gavin's business account last year for his emergency? He didn't use a single cent of it for his company. Within 48 hours of the transfer, $800,000 was moved into a private offshore account, and $200,000 was used to buy a luxury townhouse registered under Elise Carver's name. And the fake marriage certificate?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. We pulled the records from the municipal registry. There is no record of a marriage between Gavin Prescott and Sienna Sanchez. The certificate he gave you was a high-quality forgery, using the registration number of a deceased couple from a different county. He hired a fake officiant for your private ceremony. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. The sheer scale of his deception was breathtaking. He had planned this from the very beginning, treating me as nothing more than a financial resource to build his dream life with Elise. What about the corporate espionage? I asked. We found the leak, Julian replied. It was Marcus Chen, the assistant head of our development department. Gavin was paying him off through a shell company. We have the wire transfers and the encrypted emails Marcus sent to Gavin containing the proprietary blueprints for our smart logistics platform. Does Gavin know we're onto Marcus? No. Marcus thinks he's safe. I've already contacted the federal authorities. They are preparing the arrest warrants as we speak. But before the police move in, I believe you wanted to personally deliver the first blow? I looked out the window at the city skyline. Yes. I want to see his face when the ground crumbles beneath him. The next morning, Gavin's company, Prescott Logistics, was scheduled to host a press conference. Gavin had invited local media to announce a major partnership with Vanguard Group, the very competitor he had stolen our projects for. This deal was supposed to elevate his small firm into a major industry player, cementing his financial independence from the Sanchez family. The venue was a grand ballroom at the Grand Regency Hotel. The room was packed with reporters, investors, and business partners. Gavin stood at the podium, looking sharp in a tailored navy suit. Elise sat in the front row, wearing a designer dress that barely concealed her pregnant belly, her face glowing with triumph. Gavin's parents sat beside her, heads held high, basking in their son's success. Today marks a new chapter for Prescott Logistics, Gavin spoke into the microphone, his voice booming with confidence. We have overcome challenges, personal and professional, but our commitment to innovation and family values has brought us to this monumental partnership with Vanguard Group. Before he could finish his sentence, the heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. The sudden draft drew the attention of the reporters near the back. Several camera lenses pivoted away from the stage. I walked into the room. I wasn't wearing the look of a defeated, broken woman. I wore a sharp, charcoal gray power suit, my hair styled perfectly, my heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. Behind me walked Julian Vance and 4 uniformed police officers, accompanied by 2 federal agents in civilian clothes. The whispers started instantly. Is that Sienna Sanchez? What is she doing here? Look at her face, the swelling is gone, but she looks pissed. Gavin froze mid-sentence, his face turning a pale shade of gray. He gripped the edges of the podium so hard his knuckles turned white. Elise stood up from her seat, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and anger. Sienna? Gavin stammered into the microphone, forgetting to turn it off. What is the meaning of this? This is a private event. Security, please escort this woman out. But the hotel security guards stood by the doors, completely motionless. They had already been briefed by Julian and the federal officers. I walked down the center aisle, stopping just a few feet from the stage. I looked up at Gavin, a cold, calm smile on my face. Don't worry, Gavin. I'm not here to interrupt your speech, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. I'm just here to serve you some paperwork. Julian stepped forward, pulling a thick blue folder from his briefcase and placing it directly on the podium in front of Gavin. Mr. Prescott, Julian announced, his voice carrying the authority of a seasoned prosecutor. You are being served with a civil lawsuit for grand larceny, financial fraud, and corporate espionage. Simultaneously, federal warrants have been issued for your arrest. A collective gasp echoed through the ballroom. The reporters frantically began taking photos, the flashes reflecting off Gavin's terrified face. This is ridiculous. Elise screamed from the front row, rushing toward the stage. You're lying. You're just jealous because he chose me. This is harassment. Quiet, Elise, I said, not even looking at her. One of the federal agents stepped onto the stage, producing a pair of handcuffs. Gavin Prescott, you are under arrest for federal corporate espionage, interstate wire fraud, and grand theft. Please step away from the podium and place your hands behind your back. No. Wait. Gavin panicked, backing away from the microphone. There's been a mistake. The project with Vanguard was my own design. I didn't steal anything. Your accomplice, Marcus Chen, was arrested 2 hours ago, Julian Vance said coldly. He has already signed a full confession detailing your payments to him and the exact files you stole from the Sanchez Group. The representatives from Vanguard Group, who were sitting on the stage waiting to sign the contract, stood up in unison. Their lead executive looked at Gavin with sheer disgust, then turned to his team. The deal is off. We are withdrawing immediately. No, Mr. Vance, please. Gavin cried out, turning to the Vanguard executive. It's a misunderstanding. I can explain. But the federal agent grabbed Gavin's arms, forcing them behind his back. The sharp, metallic click of the handcuffs echoing through the microphone was the final nail in the coffin of his public image. Within hours of Gavin's arrest, the narrative online flipped entirely. The Sanchez Group released a comprehensive press package containing the municipal records proving the marriage was a forgery, the bank statements showing Gavin's theft of the $1 million, and the encrypted communications detailing his corporate espionage. The public, which had so eagerly demonized me days prior, turned its wrath on Gavin and Elise with terrifying speed. He literally forged a marriage certificate to rob her. That's next level evil. And the other wife knew about it. She was bragging about the car bought with stolen money. I feel so bad for Sienna. She trusted this monster for 5 years. While Gavin sat in a holding cell, unable to post the $50,000 bail. Because all his bank accounts had been frozen by federal order, Elise's life began to unravel. The luxury townhouse Gavin had bought her with my money was seized as part of the asset forfeiture protocol. The brand new SUV she had proudly displayed on social media was towed from her driveway in broad daylight, watched by whispering neighbors. 2 days after the arrest, my office phone rang. The receptionist informed me that Elise Carver was in the lobby, begging to see me. Should I call security, Miss Sanchez? The receptionist asked. I stared at the paperwork on my desk for a moment. No. Send her up. But have 2 security guards stand outside my door. When Elise walked into my office, she looked nothing like the smug, victorious woman who had confronted me at KFC or the theatrical victim who had knelt in my lobby. Her face was hollow, her eyes bloodshot, and her clothes looked rumpled and cheap. She was alone. Her daughter was likely with her grandparents. She didn't try to slap herself or scream this time. She walked slowly to the chair opposite my desk and practically collapsed into it. Sienna, she whispered, her voice cracking. Please. You have to drop the charges. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs. Why would I do that, Elise? Because of the baby, she sobbed, clutching her pregnant belly. They're taking everything. The house, the car, even the savings accounts. Gavin is facing 15 years in federal prison. If he goes down, we have nothing. My daughter won't have a father, and this baby. You knew, I interrupted, my voice flat. You knew he was using me. You knew the marriage certificate was fake. You knew the $1 million he spent on your ring, your wedding, and your townhouse was stolen from my family. Elise lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. I didn't have a choice. We were poor, Sienna. Gavin wanted to give us a good life. He said you had more money than you could ever spend, that you wouldn't even miss it. So you decided it was acceptable to parasite off my life, my emotions, and my family's hard work? I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto hers. You stood in my lobby and called me a shameless homewrecker. You had your daughter kneel and cry for the cameras, teaching her how to lie and manipulate before she even enters grade school. And now you want mercy? I was desperate. Elise cried out, reaching across the desk, but I pulled back. Please, Sienna. Gavin is a fool, but he loves me. He did it for us. If you take away our home, where are we supposed to go? You can go back to Gavin's parents, I said coldly. After all, they think you're the perfect daughter-in-law. I'm sure they'll gladly share their pension to support you. Oh, wait, I forgot. Gavin used their names as guarantors for his business loans. When his company goes bankrupt next week, the banks will be seizing their house, too. Elise froze, her face draining of what little color it had left. You're destroying his parents too. They stood by and watched him abuse me. They cheered when he brought home stolen wealth. They are complicit, Elise. In this world, actions have consequences. I stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. I won't be dropping any charges. In fact, Julian is currently preparing a civil suit against you personally for receiving stolen property. I suggest you find a good public defender. Elise stared at me, her lips trembling. The realization that there was no way out, no trick left to play, finally sank in. She slowly stood up and walked out of my office, her shoulders slumped, a broken shadow of her former self. The federal trial of Gavin Prescott began 6 months later. By then, Elise had given birth to a healthy baby boy, but there was no celebration. She lived in a cramped, rented 2-bedroom apartment with Gavin's parents, who had indeed lost their family home to the bank. The tension in their household was reportedly unbearable, with Paul Prescott constantly blaming Elise for pushing Gavin too hard for luxury items, which had ultimately led to his desperation. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the trial. I sat in the front row of the gallery, flanked by my father and Julian. Gavin was brought in wearing a drab orange jail jumpsuit, his wrists chained to his waist. He had lost weight, his hair was unkempt, and the arrogant charm he once possessed was entirely gone. He didn't dare look in my direction. The prosecution's case was airtight. Julian had handed over a mountain of Digital forensics, bank records, and the damning testimony of Marcus Chen, who had pleaded guilty to corporate espionage in exchange for a reduced sentence. When it was Gavin's turn to take the stand, his defense attorney tried to paint him as a man driven to desperation by the pressure of supporting two families, portraying me as an overbearing, controlling partner who had financially starved him. It was a pathetic attempt, and the prosecution dismantled it within minutes. Mr. Prescott, the federal prosecutor said, holding up a printout of Gavin's encrypted messages to Elise. On October 14th of last year, you received a transfer of $1 million from Sienna Sanchez. That very evening, you texted Elise Carver, and I quote, "The cash went through. The dumb bitch didn't even ask for a repayment schedule. We're locking down the townhouse tomorrow. Our future is set." Do these sound like the words of a desperate, starved man? Or a calculating thief? Gavin looked down at the witness stand, his voice barely audible. I was trying to secure my family's future. By destroying another family's legacy, the prosecutor countered. By systematically stealing trade secrets and funneling them to a competitor, nearly bankrupting the Sanchez Group. Gavin had no answer. He closed his eyes as a single tear escaped, rolling down his cheek. In the gallery, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. I had expected to feel a rush of triumph, a surge of adrenaline at seeing his downfall. But instead, all I felt was a profound sense of relief. The chapter of my life that had been defined by his lies was finally, irrevocably coming to an end. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They found Gavin Prescott guilty on all counts: federal wire fraud, grand larceny, corporate espionage, and identity fraud. 2 weeks later, the judge sentenced him to 12 years in a federal penitentiary, with no possibility of parole for the first 9 years. He was also ordered to pay restitution of $1.8 million to the Sanchez Group, a debt that would follow him for the rest of his life. As he was led out of the courtroom in chains, Elise stood in the back, holding her newborn baby, weeping silently. Gavin looked at her, then turned his gaze toward me. For a brief second, our eyes met. There was no anger in my eyes. Only pity. He had traded a life of genuine love, wealth, and respect for a house of cards, built on lies and greed. And now, the cards had fallen. A year after the trial, the Sanchez Group had not only recovered but was thriving, with Vanguard Group heavily fined and discredited for their involvement in receiving stolen trade secrets. Our smart logistics platform had captured the majority of the market share. Our stock prices reached an all-time high, and my father officially stepped down, naming me the sole CEO of the Sanchez Group. I stood on the balcony of my new penthouse apartment, looking out over the glittering lights of the city. The cool night air was refreshing, a stark contrast to the suffocating warmth of the past. My phone buzzed. It was a news notification on my feed. Former accomplice Elise Carver sentenced to 3 years of probation for receiving stolen property, forced to sell remaining assets. I glanced at the headline and swiped it away. She was no longer a part of my story. They were all ghosts of a past I had outgrown. I picked up a glass of white wine, taking a slow, quiet sip. For 5 years, I had lived a life designed by someone else's greed. But tonight, as the head of my family's legacy, entirely free and surrounded by the empire I had helped rebuild, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The best revenge wasn't just watching them fall. It was rebuilding myself so high that I could no longer hear them hit the ground.